Thank you very much. On February 7, 2009, the federal government tables the Budget Implementation Act that includes a new bill entitled the Public Sector Equitable Compensation Act. This bill would remove the right of public sector workers to file complaints for pay equity with the Canadian Human Rights Commission. The bill would make it more difficult to claim pay equity by redefining the notion of female predominant job groups to require them to be 70% women. Only certain employers are targeted by this bill, coincidentally. This bill applies to the following employers: to the Treasury Board, separate agencies, and the RCMP. It does not apply to the federally regulated private sector. This bill would redefine a female predominant group as a job group or job class that is composed of at least 70% women. This would make it more difficult to raise pay equity issues in most public sector workplaces. Currently, the PSAC represents members in 10 public sector job groups that are considered female predominant. If this bill is adopted, only 5 groups will remain. The Public Sector Equitable Compensation Act will restrict the substance and the application of pay equity in the public sector. The bill transforms pay equity in an equitable compensation issue that must be discussed at the bargaining table. If pay equity is not achieved through the bargaining process, individual workers can file a complaint with the Public Service Labor Relations Board, but without the union's support. In fact, this bill will impose a $50,000 fine on any union that would encourage or assist their own members in filing a pay equity complaint. According to Section 41, it is astounding that this bill would impose a fine on a union for doing what it is legally obligated to do: represent its members. Without union support, individual workers rarely have the resources or the strength to deal with the delays and legal tactics that are deployed by the employers in most cases. Pay equity is a fundamental human right that has been protected by the Canadian Human Rights Act since 1977. The Supreme Court of Canada has recognized that when a government violates women's rights to pay equity, there is also an infringement of their constitutional equity rights. And it cannot be traded away at the bargaining table. Section 399 of the Budget Implementation Act amends the Canadian Human Rights Act by stating that the Canadian Human Rights Commission does not have jurisdiction to deal with pay equity complaints in the public service. This from a government that has unilaterally imposed minimal wage increases over already negotiated and agreed upon collective agreements negotiated in good faith, brothers and sisters. This bill is one more example of the attacks being waged by the Harper government against women's rights. And it is one more reason for PSAC members to inform themselves, to mobilize, to organize against these sexist and discriminatory practices. This bill will do nothing to address the delays and frustrations experienced by PSAC members at Canada Post. Clerical workers who filed a pay equity complaint over 25 years ago are still before the courts. Nor will this bill help the Radio-Canada workers who have been before the courts for almost 10 years, demanding equal pay for work of equal value. Why did it leave these workers out in the cold? PSAC is convinced that the downgrading of pay equity as proposed in this bill is a violation of the constitutional charter, equality rights of working women. The federal government should abandon this bill and implement the recommendations put forth of the Pay Equity Task Force. This would be a first step towards a proactive pay equity law that will make a real difference in lives of working women. Why is it that in our progress as a Canadian state, we witness a United States President who promised change recently and has pledged to sign the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, a law that would see significant improvements to pay equity legislation in the United States? Upon signing the bill, President Obama was quoted as saying, Signing this bill today is sending a clear message that making our economy works means making sure it works for everybody. There are no second-class citizens in our workplaces. If Canada is a party to the United Nations Human Rights Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, and the world thinks Canada is ahead of the United States on progressive policies for women and human rights, then why are the Conservatives attacking women's progress? Why are the Conservatives discriminating against women in Canada? It's time for you to take action. Don't be silent. One person, one vote. Support those who will ensure this human rights is protected. PSAC members are seeking your assistance in various campaigns being organized from coast to coast to coast. Whether it be writing to members of Parliament, visiting members of Parliament's offices, rallies, email campaigns, plant-gaining strategic locations, as we did and we all froze this morning, there is only so much we can do. I encourage all union members to sign the postcards that are being distributed that are addressed to Senators Jaffer and Fairburn and drop them in the mailboxes. Please remember that no postage is required. I urge you to get involved on the local regional women's committee as they take on this fight also. A meeting will take place tonight at the local PSAC office at 5:30. And all union sisters, please attend. I urge you to thank you, brother.
To all members of Parliament, I've been working on human rights issues for the last 20 years. In the gay male, working in the federal government, I have been through a lot, and I have done a lot, and I have gone through 3 acts of legislation. This Bill C-10 is going to be a negative impact on all pay equity issues and women's issues. For that I say shame, shame, shame.